Well, hello, everyone. This is Shannan Vance-Ocampo. My pronouns are she and her, and I serve as the General Presbyter for the Presbytery of Southern New England. And this is connecting our conversations, our podcast space for conversations that push the edges of our faith and help us to deepen discipleship. The Presbytery of Southern New England is a regional governing body in the Presbyterian Church, U.S.A. Today, for our podcast, I'm talking with the Reverends Kevin White and Dallas Bradel. Kevin is the moderator of our presbytery, and Dallas is our vice moderator. We thought it would be fun to have them on the podcast so we could get to know a little bit more about them and have some open conversations so everyone can get to know our leadership better, especially this year as we have all of our presbytery meetings back on Zoom. So welcome, Kevin. Welcome, Dallas, to Connecting Our Conversations.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shannan. Good to be here.
Yeah, so I thought I'd start with a kind of softball question, something easy, and just invite both of you to tell us about you. We were just talking a little bit about ourselves ahead of time, which is why we should hit record far sooner than we usually do. But tell us about who you are in ministry and kind of who you are as a person and some of the things you've been doing before you served in the Presbytery of Southern New England. So whoever wants to share first, go ahead.
I'm being pointed at, so I will go first. I am Kevin White. I am the pastor of Calvin Presbyterian Church in Cumberland, Rhode Island. I've been at Calvin now for 9 years. It's my first call. So actually this past Friday was my ninth ordiversary. So I've just entered my 10th year at Calvin. They haven't brought out the pitchforks yet, so things are good. I love it here. Married to Rachel, who is a wonderfully talented artist and just a beautiful person. And we have our son Ezra is a junior in high school, so we are entering that season of life where we are doing college visits and thinking about that next phase for all of us. So I go to bed terrified and I wake up terrified.
Soon you're going to be an empty nester and it's just going to be the two of you and you're going to have to figure out what to do next.
I know. We have been talking about that too. So what were the other questions? Where were we before this?
Yeah, like what was life like before the Presbytery of Southern New England for you?
Yeah, so we moved up from Richmond, Virginia. That's where I was born and raised. I went to Union Presbyterian Seminary down there in Richmond. And before that, before seminary, I worked as a part-time youth director for about 6 years at a Presbyterian church down there. That was kind of where I felt the call to go to seminary, to go to full-time ordained ministry. I spent time, I got an undergrad degree in philosophy, so I did what you do. I got a job working retail out of college. So I worked at a small outdoor gear shop selling backpacking and camping gear and stuff like that. And also spent some time working at a boys' home for, it was a residential boys' home. I worked there for a year. So did that. I went to seminary 9 years after undergrad, so I had a little space before that of doing some other stuff. So, yeah.
Interesting.
That's me.
You and I are both philosophy majors in undergrad, so.
Yes. Yeah, I toyed with doing continuing on and doing philosophy, but I think there's even less money in that and ability to support yourself in that than ministry. So.
Just be like a wandering philosophical poet somewhere or something like that, right?
It sounds delightful, but it does not put food on the table.
No, it's true. Used to, but does not anymore. So,
yeah.
So Dallas, tell us about you.
So I'm Dallas Bradel, and I'm currently the pastor at St. Andrew Presbyterian Church in Groton, Connecticut. And I came here from the Presbytery of Northern New England. And let me tell you, it's very different from Southern New England. It's a lot of land. We had a Presbytery meeting once in the far north of Vermont, and there was no Wi-Fi, and it's a very different presbytery. But I was there for quite a few years, and I moved here from just north of Boston, which was my home for, I don't know, 15 years. And prior to that, I have served, let's see, I have served churches in, let's see, Charlotte Presbytery in North Carolina. That was my first call. And I have been in southern New Hampshire, different parts of Massachusetts, including the western part, which was fun. And I did an interim for a year in Lehigh Presbyterian, the first pres of Allentown, Pennsylvania. So
Oh,
I feel like I've gotten around the Northeast a little bit anyway.
yeah.
Yeah, what are the other questions?
What was life like before PSNE for you, or before even like ministry? What were you up to?
Oh, sure. So I was born and raised outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania,
Uh-huh.
and my family's all still there. So I'm sort of the one who wandered off because I like the ocean. But we grew up in a small town, a suburb of Pittsburgh. And when I went off to college, which was Lehigh University, I was allowed to go to the eastern part of the state, but I had to stay in Pennsylvania because there was state financial aid at the time. So I always joke with my parents that I got as far away as I could and still be in the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Lehigh's like just over the border, like almost
Yeah,
Jersey.
it's very close to the New Jersey border. So I studied. They had a major called Foreign Careers at the time, which was kind of economics and business and history and it was world studies of some sort. But I also had a major in German, and that was my sweet spot. I loved languages. I love to travel. So I got to spend quite a few I got to do quite a few visits to Germany and a semester there when I was in college. And I lived in a foreign language house, actually. And so, although we didn't always speak German, that was the goal. So when you came to the dinner table, at least you were speaking German. And I enjoyed that. It was a small little community, and that was what we had in common.
Yeah.
And when I graduated from college, it was actually, well, see, this was the 80s. You remember the 80s, right, Shannon?
Yes, I do remember the 80s. Don't worry.
So I didn't have a job offer right after graduation, and so the counselors there at Lehigh suggested to all of us, if you didn't have a job, to go to graduate school because that's what you did in the 80s. And so I actually went to law school right out of college. Yeah, believe it or not. And I was in Pittsburgh. I was at Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, and I really didn't like it. But one of those things where I knew it would serve me well, and it has. And I did graduate from law school, and I did pass the Pennsylvania bar. So there you go. I'm very proud of that.
Yes.
It was a long haul, and it was a big achievement. And I'll tell you, one of the things that was I think one of the things that I did not kind of groove with is that it's a very adversarial system. And one of the things I love about ministry is that we're all about building bridges. And so that suits me. So there, you need the same conflict management skills, but they're used in a different way. And we're trying to bring people together rather than polarizing them for our own benefit, as lawyers do. I'm sorry for all the lawyers who are listening. I do love you. So somebody has to do it. So
yes, somebody does have to do it. We
it's
do
a
need
word job, but it's not for me. So
and not to be adversarial, but I think I told you this, Dallas. My dad went to Lafayette and played football, so I was not allowed to look at Lehigh when I was in high school. So of course, the first thing I did when they used to have college fairs in college was I went to the Lehigh table and told them how much I love Lehigh and I really wanted to go there for college so that they would send get my parents on their mailing list. And then I got a poster out of them and I brought it home and just to poke my dad a little bit. But the Lehigh Lafayette rivalry was a big deal in my house, and we weren't supposed to like anybody from Lehigh, and it was just really ridiculous. But football rivalry is huge between those two schools, right?
Oh, it's very huge. I was interviewed by somebody for an interim position, and he said, "Yeah, my daughter is a student at Lafayette." And I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And he didn't blink. He just moved. It's a huge rivalry. It really is. So
Yeah. I was I spent a lot of time at Lafayette in high school going to football games. So much so I just don't want to go to any more football games because I was like dragged to way too many as a kid. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's
but you know, it's okay. I mean, it was fun. I mean, but
yeah. Anyway, well, I'll still like you even though your dad went to Lafayette.
yeah.
Um, and I practiced very briefly, and I at the same time I was really being discipled at First Presbyterian Church of Pittsburgh.
Ah,
And it was a great church. And I think it's the community's changed and the church has changed with it, which is awesome. But I was really being discipled, and yeah, I sensed a call to ministry. And so I went off to Gordon Conwell, which got me into New England, which I love, love, love. And I didn't really know anything about the Bible. I never planned to be a pastor, I will tell you that. I was going to do children's ministry. I love working with kids, and that's,
yeah.
that's one of my favorite parts of ministry. And I went there and I loved the languages and I loved the biblical studies, and I ended up switching to the MDiv,
Yeah.
and it was, it was
Mhm.
powerful. It was a very interesting, very different environment from law school. And yeah, and I was at a wonderful church. So I had opportunities for leading in the local church, which was something new to me too. So, and I ended up doing a second degree in counseling, because the
Wow.
thing about seminary is that you learn so much information, but they don't always prepare you to interact with people. And so, and that got me some really cool internships at McLean Hospital and some places. So I had a great experience there. I was
Ah,
there for 5 years. So
ah,
Dallas, I didn't know. That's interesting. You never planned on being a pastor. I actually, when I felt the call to go to seminary and what eventually became the call to ordained ministry, my first thought was, all right, I'm going to go to seminary, but I'm not going to be a pastor. I wanted to do like a theology. It's that philosophy background, right? I wanted to do
there
that. And
you
I kept resisting and resisting. And
go.
yeah, well, eventually here I am.
God gets us where we're supposed to go. And
Yes,
I
that's
think
right.
the journey is a big part of growing closer to God and learning who we are and who God has created us to be. So
Yeah.
I'm a
Yeah,
big fan.
yeah. Not to hijack your question, Shannon.
For it. Go for
Yeah,
it. Hijack away.
I had actually, my intent was to apply to at Union to the THM program, and when I was applying, they were reshuffling things, and they actually were not accepting any THM students like that year, and so their response was, "Well, just apply to the MDiv. You'll get like all the same things, and you can switch over later." So that was how I I ended up in the MDiv program. And
And now you're the moderator of the Presbytery.
it's right. We're
Yeah.
Presbyterians, Providence, right?
Yeah. You never know what's going to
Providential.
happen to you.
That's
So
right.
we started talking about it already, but like, what are some of the things that like you most love to do in ministry? I know we all, I mean, in any work you do, right? You always end up doing things you love and things that don't totally like ring all your bells. But what are some of like your favorite things that you get to do in ministry? Because there's always fabulous things we get to do that no one else gets to do, right?
Yeah. Well, I'll take that one out because I love leading worship. I
Mm,
just, when God gives me a message and we're all together there, I generally just really enjoy it.
yeah.
I don't know, there's something powerful about that. And I love meeting people for coffee
Mm,
Mhm.
because you
Mhm.
really get to know them. But I love working with children. You know, that's the church where I currently serve, they don't happen to have any children right now, and I miss it. I really do miss it. So yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Was there,
Yeah,
right?
um I love worship. I love preaching. I really do. I love preaching. Um I like leading Bible studies, but I like that I get to be a part of the lives of so many people on so many different levels, right? Like, and I think about like you're there for baptisms, weddings, funerals, like all these big moments in people's lives. You get to be a part of that, but then you also get to um, be a part of people's lives on smaller levels, whether it's, coffee hour after church or just going and grabbing coffee, like you mentioned, Dallas, or just those conversations. And I was actually thinking about this the other day of like trying to describe what I do to somebody. And the best thing I could come up with, and I may have read this somewhere, so if I'm ripping this off of somebody else, I apologize. But like I get to be like a holder of people's stories with them.
Mm,
Um, and yeah, that to me is such a sacred thing. Um, and there's moments, I love those moments when, in a Bible study or a conversation, and you see either in yourself or somebody else kind of that moment where something just connects and changes kind of your whole outlook on things, or gives you a new perspective on what God might be up to in the world or in your life. And I love those moments, but I also just like the day to day, just being a part of the stories of people's lives. And yeah, it's a very humbling thing that people invite me into that. I mean, by being their pastor, that's part of what they're doing, is inviting me to do that with them.
yeah, those really special holy moments of
Yeah.
ministry. Yeah. So swapping from congregational life to, life in the presbytery. What made you both say yes to moderatorial leadership? Like Kevin, you're almost done with your year, but like what's been well, you were vice moderator before, of course, but
Yeah.
what's it been like? What's fun about it? Maybe there's something terrible about it. I don't know. But I was a moderator years ago in Elizabeth Presbytery, which is now no more because the presbyteries in New Jersey were merged. But uh it was I had fun doing some ordinations and installations of colleagues, and just also working on other pieces around the presbytery. I was moderator when we were without a presbytery leader, so I got
Mm.
extra work, that unpaid labor, which is the church is
I,
famous for, right? But
I,
so
I'm
what's
very
it been like?
grateful that is not the case while I'm moderator. Thank
Yes,
you,
exactly.
Shannon.
Thank you, Shannon.
Yes. But yeah, so what's it been like?
Yeah, I think that what was the first question? What made you?
What made you say yes to it? Yeah.
Yeah, the answer to that is I have no idea.
The
I
nominating
honestly,
called you at the right moment.
the nominating called me at a moment uh, in a season when I was really thinking about how I needed to be more comfortable doing things I am not comfortable doing.
Mm,
And I say this as somebody who is fully Presbyterian. I do not like meetings of any shape or form. Um, and so yeah, I think it really was like the last thing in the world I wanted to do, was that I would have just kind of on my own said yes to, would be like, well, yeah, sign up to moderate more meetings. Why not? But I had, yeah, I was really kind of challenging myself to um, be more comfortable doing things I was not comfortable doing.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, and then I think when nominating called me, I was planning for my sabbatical, which was going to be the following year, and so I was going to be vice moderator and then be moderator. And I did say, I was like, okay, just so you know, like when I moved from vice moderator to moderator, like less than a month after that, I'm going to be on sabbatical. Um, and they nominating still said, yes, that's fine. And so I was like, oh goodness, I guess.
That's what the
But
up
no,
for.
yeah, it's no, it's been really good to kind of get into that aspect of kind of the more mid-council stuff, and the getting it's been actually a really nice balance. I mean, sometimes a little too busy, felt like a little too much, but overall, it's been a really nice balance um, to congregational ministry, because you get so focused on the congregation, which is, I mean, that's why you're there, is for this. That's where God has you, for these people in this place. But it's been really good to have kind of that bigger picture of the wider presbytery and what's going on in the wider church, because
Yeah.
it's so easy just in congregational life, you're focused on all the ups and downs and what's going on kind of right around you in the local congregation, that it's too easy to forget that we're a part of something bigger too, and there are other congregations celebrating things and struggling with things, and all of that, and just being able to have that bigger picture of the body of Christ, in both what is very much the same across congregations. We're all people, but also what makes each place wonderfully distinct and unique in its expression of the church and the gospel.
Yeah. Yeah. What's it been like for you, Dallas?
Well, so when I became vice moderator, I found out that a month later, we were leaving town for a sabbatical. No, which it turned out it was summer. Summer was quiet. It was fine. But no, I said yes. Mostly because they needed somebody, and sometimes that's the best reason to say yes. And she knew me, the chair of nominating. She knew me a little bit, and she could tell. So when she talked a lot about roundtable and how that's the place where some of the bigger issues were really discussed, because I like that. I always am pulling the camera back because I like to see the larger picture. And so she talked me into it with that, because that did sound really interesting. But it turned out after I went ahead and said yes, I thought, this is perfect, because I just came to this presbytery. I've always been in northern New England, and so I'll get to know people in the presbytery. I'll get to know my colleagues in this part of the world, and they know what's going on in Connecticut better than I do. And yeah, so it's turned out, to be really great. I've gotten to know other pastors, and I think as moderator, I'm sure just from like attending things, events like ordinations or funerals and so forth, that I'll be present for so many of those and get to participate in them. So, yeah, I don't regret it, and I'm really starting to get excited. I'm going to become moderator in May.
Yes.
And go on sabbatical. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. That's fantastic. It's fantastic. And both of you had a chance, because part of the training is to go to the National Moderators Conference, where you either go virtually, or you can go to Louisville, depending on what works, and get to meet other moderators around the country and other presbyteries, and hear some of the sort of the even bigger picture stuff, right, Dallas? Like even like zooming out even more, right? And so I've not been to Moderators Conference. I've just watched it from afar. I don't think they were doing it when I was a presbytery moderator, or they kept it a secret from me or something. I don't know. But what was that like for you? Just like meeting other moderators around the country, and hearing about some of the bigger picture stuff in the denomination that we're trying to tie into locally here in this presbytery.
Yeah, Dallas, oh, you're pointing at me. Okay.
I'm pointing at you because you went in person. I did it virtually, but you went in person.
Yeah, I was able to go in person. And honestly, the thing I was so that was a couple years ago, year and a half ago or so. And so things had been coming back from the height of the pandemic, but hadn't had much, big in-person conference-y sort of things. And so I was excited to be able to go in person, just to be able to go somewhere in person, and that connection with just other folks, moderators, yes, but just other pastors, other elders, other people doing very similar work, but in different places. And so that aspect was great. I love that. I actually was there and ran into someone that I was in seminary with, who they're now in a completely other part of the country. And I'm not on Facebook or anything, so I don't, I'm horrible at keeping in touch with people. So somebody I hadn't talked to in, since seminary, I think, and they were there, and we're going to be, new moderator of their presbytery. And both of us, it was great to catch up and realize neither one of us felt like we had any idea what we were doing. That's always comforting to, okay. we're all in this together. Yeah, but then the actual like the conference part, the reason for it, I found really helpful. One, there's a ton of information, so I know I did, it's like the fire hose thing, right?
Yeah.
So I know there was stuff that I forgot or didn't make note of or whatever. But I found it really helpful for me personally. Again, as I said, I don't like meetings. So it was really helpful to help me just think through how I do, even just session meetings, right? Like just that whole polity moderating aspect. Um, which thinking back to seminary, we had polity. I don't remember us ever talking about moderating meetings or things like that kind of nitty gritty stuff. I think we should, as you show up and you're moderating meetings, and so that part I actually found it really helpful. The content was really helpful to me, and just thinking through, and then hearing more about the larger stuff going on in the national church. There was a big we talked a lot about, there was lots of presentations and discussion about Matthew 25, which was really good. I really appreciated that was part of it. There's other things going on in the mission and life of the church was really helpful, and that really encouraged me to bring that back. And I know we're talking about it in our Presbytery, and we have been here at Southern New England, but just in local congregation, we had touched on it, but we hadn't really done much in it. It really encouraged me to think about making that something I wanted to be a priority for us as a congregation
Mm.
going forward.
Ah, so maybe you'll become a Matthew 25 church this year.
Maybe.
Maybe.
We're yeah, maybe.
What was it like for you, Dallas? You did the virtual one.
Yeah, I had a conflict. I had to be here.
Yeah.
I had to be away. And so anyway, it was great that you can be away and then still open your computer and participate, But I think that I certainly missed, and I wish I could have been there. I missed all the fellowship. And I think I missed part of those big picture things, because mostly when we were online, it was the worship and it was a lot of the polity. And so you could have signed in, you came into that class, but then people would go off, and if they had small group discussions, or if they were, all the conversations that happen over meals. And so I did miss that. But it really was, polity is not my strong suit either. And I say that here, I come, the moderator, and it somebody, after I was elected, a good friend whom I consulted when I was in a church that was having some conflict, I would call him and say, what happens if this happens? What do I do if this happens? And he said, so you're going to moderate, huh? I was like, yeah, they trained me for that. So, and it was really helpful, because I think you can know the basics of how to run a meeting through Robert's rules, but there are so many different scenarios that can happen, and we want to do things decently and in order. And so the great thing is that, right, Kevin, we have the stated clerk there. So if we have any procedural questions, we can consult.
Yes.
But yeah, and I'd never really thought about even just kind of scripting some of those things so that I could go in the meeting with confidence and really focus on what was happening, what's happening to people. And yeah, so it was good for me for polity. And I do regret that I missed all those other pieces. So things I didn't know.
Yeah. We'll find some other like conference or national thing to make it happen, so that you can get out and do one of those things too, right?
I feel like too there was this guy, I don't know, Dallas, if when you were there attending, if they had it, but I feel like there was also, at least maybe it was in the small group thing and we just started talking about it, but really looking at polity, not just as like how do you run this, but like how do you run it in a way that's not just like, this is the rules, but that it is a way of care, and there's a pastoral care to it, and how you do it, and how people are, you're allowing, people to be heard, and to make all of that. So I do remember we talking about that, and that kind of helped me to think through, again, even in session meetings and stuff, but just think through
Mhm.
these as, they're the Robert's rules and stuff are okay for, can be okay for what they are, but really the goal of it all is, there's a pastoral and um, yeah, a gospel
Right.
aspect to it of how are we, even in how we're doing meetings, how is the gospel being shared and proclaimed and lifted up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's very much about making sure that everybody has a voice. People
Yeah.
get hung up and like, I've had people say to me, that's not how it's done in Robert's rules. And to me, the rules are helpful. They're there to be a guide so that we can make sure that we're all in order, and we're making sure that everybody has a voice so that, we can then make some good decisions. But I think you're right, Kevin. I think that's a different way of looking at meetings. And that's why I've been able to lead meetings. It's just,
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm less strict about you have the floor. And in a session meeting, you don't have to be as, as strict about it as you
Right.
would in a Presbyterian meeting. But I think the idea, and it's hard when people don't talk, right? But the
Yeah.
idea behind it is making sure that everybody has a say and
Mhm.
keeping order so that everybody has a chance to speak. So,
And
Yeah.
keeping it as a
And
conversation, right? Keeping it
yeah.
as a conversation. And, if we spend so much time on like every little nitpicky piece of parliamentary procedure,
Mhm.
at some point we stifle the conversation, right? But it is helpful to like know where you're
Yeah.
going, but then
Mhm.
keeping people in it. I know I've been moderating the last few years the mission agency board at the national church, and that's like, like we get a script, and even the legal office gives us a script. Like it's a hefty script
Mm.
that we get for that meeting, but I try to like moderate, and certainly I keep us organized with my co-chair, and we split the meeting up in moderating as co-chairs, but the script is there to I like that what you said, Dallas. Like I've loved the script because for a 3-day big meeting like that, it really helps keep you focused. But I really want people to talk and have that interaction, and luckily there's just been a few times where we've had to really get deep into the weeds of that parliamentary procedure stuff, which is not, there's nothing wrong with it, but I really much more want it to be a conversation. And the more you moderate, the just more you get comfortable with the conversation of the
Yeah.
meeting rather than the rules of the meeting. And I think less and less people who are in the meetings want to do the rules. They really just want to be in the relationship and figure out what
Mhm.
we're doing to kind of create the containers and the processes that allow the ministries to flourish, because that's really the goal. The goal is that the ministry flourishes, whatever it
Right.
is. Not necessarily that the
Yeah.
meeting is in good order. The goal is it should be in good order, but the ministries need to flourish, because that's really what we're here for. So
Yeah. And all those things, those are just like Robert's rules, and they're tools. And like any tool, it can be used constructively and it can be used very destructively.
yes.
And
Mhm.
yeah,
And it needs
that's the
to,
challenge.
yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me some about, we started with both of you and we got into meetings, but go back to both of you, like, when we're not in ministry, like hobbies, interests, like what don't we know about both of you? Like, what do you like to do when you're not doing these things? So Kevin's now pointing at Dallas. Dallas has
I
to go.
pointed
Oh,
at you,
okay.
Dallas.
Okay. I
Dallas
didn't
has to
know
go first
that.
on this one.
That's fine. Um, so to know about me, I'm an introvert. So as much as I love people, I need lots of alone time. I love to read. Take me to a bookstore, take me to a used bookstore, and I'm even happier because I'm also a history nerd. And so I love, in fact, well, I had to stop recently, but I've been in the past and here in Groton, even at one of the historical homes. I love to work in the archives, and they loved having volunteers in the archives. And this particular place has documents and letters and things that have been in boxes in the house from previous residents, that they're part of the story of this house. And I get to transcribe them, and you're discovering like talk about voices, like seeing, and it's just, I don't know, there's something about connecting with the past and seeing how the two, the present and the past are related and what we learn. But I just think it's fun. I like to uncover stories and mysteries. And I once transcribed a girl's diary, and we didn't even know who had written it. And so it took me and it was like solving a mystery. So I think that's really fun. I loved going to antique stores and, the vintage marketplaces and that sort of thing. And I also do some textile arts just for fun,
Oh,
like more embroidery and,
wow.
we tend to do like small scale quilting, like doll size quilting, but it's like, it's telling a story again, and you can use cloth, you can actually mix cloth and paper, you can use embellishments and different kinds of embroidery. And it's just like, I read books and I look at ideas and then I just play, but that's really fun for me. It is.
Yeah.
And while I'm not very athletic, I love living near the water because it's a great place to walk. Like just going down to Noank, which is really very close here. There's just a public dock that's on the water, but it's beautiful. And it's a beautiful, the streets, you have places that were built in the 1700s. And so I do like, it's like history and
Yeah.
athletics combined, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Out of New England, you feel like you're living in a history book, right?
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
love,
Yeah. Yeah. It's some
yeah,
of the beauty of where we get to do ministry here. So,
yeah.
so Kevin, I know you're sitting in an art studio, but it's not your art studio. So tell us.
I am sitting in, yeah. Yeah. I am not an artist, and you don't want me to draw or paint you anything. Um, yeah, other things I do, well, this is ministry related, but I do enjoy it. I'm very, very part-time, but I work as a chaplain at Bryant University down the road here in Rhode Island in the campus ministry department. So that's very, very part-time, but we don't have many college age or high school age at our church. So I get to keep touch with the younger generation that way. Um, I'm a huge soccer fan. I love soccer. I'm very excited. Rhode Island is getting a new professional soccer team, and opening day is Saturday. So
Oh,
I'm very excited. I have season ticket. I have a season ticket. That was my birthday / Father's Day gift last year, was I got to buy season tickets for the opening season. So huge soccer fan. I'm a big fan of Everton over in the Premier League. It's rough. That keeps me humble, which is a good spiritual practice, rooting for them. And until recently, I was still a very avid soccer player, but my knees have other things to say about that now. So I've redirected all my soccer energy from playing to just becoming a very annoying fan of the sport. So I enjoy that. My son does karate, and so I do that with him. Um, Not as much recently. Kind of had to pull back a little bit, but hoping to get back in that with him. So I'm just trying to make sure he can't beat me up too bad. So just trying to maintain a little bit as close as I can. I enjoy doing that. I love when the weather's nice. We live near a bike path along a river, so I love going and riding my bike along the river. Um, I too love to read, Dallas. I'm an introvert as well. Um, I like all sorts of stuff. I like theology and philosophy, but I also really like science fiction. So I enjoy reading a good science fiction book. And as a family, we enjoy playing games together. I love Lego. And there are people now listening to that going, some people are going, we get it, and other people are going, I thought Kevin was a grown up. What's he doing? But it's a family hobby that we've had since our son was little, and we just loved it. And um, there's something very satisfying about doing something where everything fits together, nice and neat,
uh,
because so much of ministry is not that way. Um,
mm,
there's something very fun about that. So that's a hobby that we do as a family too, that we enjoy building things together and doing things like that. And yeah, we play board games and all those wonderful things.
yeah.
So, yeah.
And so as we close up, our conversation, which has been so much fun. So tell me, some of your hopes and dreams for the presbytery and you know, as you sort of, you know, sit a little above the system, but also serve in the local church, like, what are you hoping and dreaming for the presbytery these days as we do our ministry together?
Hmm.
I'll leave you with a real easy question at the end, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'll start on that, Shannon, just
Yeah.
because you're the most, when you were away, Kevin, I did get to do a few things. And one of them was you and Shannon were both away, and I got a call about connecting with the self-development of people committee and that's from the mission agency, right?
Yes.
So, and I had never heard of them. And they basically give away money, but it's all about community. And it's people who are in the community who don't have the financial means, who have a vision or something that's going to build the community or give voice to people who don't have it. And, you know, you would know more about this than I do, but I was just stunned. And I think for me, when I just think about dreaming and how things are moving forward post-COVID in a time when churches are declining, I just happened to listen to a webinar. I was on it was an hour webinar today, and it was called Listening to Your Community. And, you know, sometimes we think so much about the mission of the church as being far away, and it is far away sometimes, but this sense of now that the church is different, that I'm very hopeful of more churches turning from inward focus to out in the community. And how can we listen to our communities? And I think as the person who's going to be the moderator, I really, I guess I would want to encourage that and get to be in those places and hang out. Like
Mm.
Kevin and I always say that we can't visit the churches, like, you know, with somebody who's an elder at the church, who's a ruling elder, has sometimes the time to do that. But I don't know. This is just a seed of a kind of a dream, but I'm putting it out there because I think that's powerful. And I think the church, I think about a lot of churches in the 60s, especially, but the church used to be sort of a center of community action, a place where people did things, where the church had the block party and they were very engaged in, you know, the needs of the community because they, you know, it was just part of what you did. The church was very much more a part of the community and not just an outside institution. And now I'm seeing more, you know, the conversations about missional churches and about being in the
Mm.
community and not just on our holy hill.
Mm.
And I think that's fun. And as a new person here, you know, I'd like to do more of that. Not just among member churches of the Presbytery, but also where I am. You
Yeah.
know, we were already talking about the history of our own towns and the indigenous people. Do we even know, you know,
Yeah.
who those people were? So that's
Well,
just
you know, you're going to be moderator. You get to set the tone. So you could start meetings with you know, a church doing some storytelling around some of that. You
that's a
know,
good idea.
it's your direction. You can set the tone however you want to. So things
Let's
to think
talk.
about. Yeah, we can talk more about that. Yeah.
That sounds great.
Yeah, it'd be
Yeah,
fun.
yeah. Um, yeah, I mentioned Matthew 25, so the more I explore that and explore that with my church, and then at the presbytery level, as we are, you know, Matthew 25 presbytery, but as we're working on, you know, getting local congregations and that, just excited to see what can come of that. And I've been involved with our anti-racism and equity team um, for the past 3.5 years or so. So the work that team is doing and is inviting the whole presbytery into, we're going to be um, having our anti-racism policy as coming up at this next meeting, and just what that says. That's a policy, and policies can sometimes just be policies. But I know a lot of work has gone into making that be very aspirational and invitational into that anti-racism work, and a lot of work went into how is making sure it's clear how that is a part of. It's not something we add on to the gospel, but it's a part of what it means to proclaim and embody and live into the gospel. so I'm excited to see where that goes. And I know, there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of work within ourselves to be done with that. But it's also very exciting. And I think that those sorts of things also open up those new ways of what it looks like and means to be the church here and now in our, in this cultural moment, but in our local context too, with Dallas, as you were saying, just with our histories that sometimes we know about, sometimes we don't. But all those histories are a part of who we are, for good and for ill, in a lot of ways. And so the more we can learn about that, and then we really, ask God, where do we go from here? Where's God leading us? So that, I was I don't know. I was thinking about a couple sermons ahead. We have Easter coming up, and then we have the next Sunday is usually the reading with Thomas and wanting to, right. And that is one of my favorites. So I've been thinking about that a little bit, and I love that Jesus still has scars after his resurrection.
Yeah.
So this, like, the life that he lived is a part of, even in the resurrection body, but those scars become part of what proclaims the gospel to Thomas and all the disciples. And so I find myself often thinking about, our history and stuff is so scarred. But there's opportunity there for the gospel to come in, and that is part of our story, and can be a part of the story of how the gospel is impacting us here and now and on into the future.
Yeah.
So those are the things that excite me.
A
Yeah.
good note to end on. Thanks so much. Thank you both for being part of this conversation. This was a lot of fun to hear what's up with both of you, and hopefully for those in the Presbytery and others listening along, just to get to know the wealth and the depth and breadth of ministry that's brought to us both by our moderator and our vice moderator, just both incredibly gifted pastors and gifted leaders. And we're so glad to have you on board in this really important season of the Presbytery. So thanks for being in the roles that you're in and for the ministry you do. And thanks for being part of this podcast and episode of Connecting Our Conversations. So thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Dallas. And so grateful for both of you.
Thank you, Shannan. It was fun.
It was fun.